Hello, good afternoon. Sir Roger Bannister, the first man to run a mile in under 4 minutes, has died at the age of 88. He set the record on a track in Oxford in 1954, later winning gold at that year's Commonwealth Games. Well, after retiring from athletics, Sir Roger then became a distinguished doctor and neurologist. His family said Sir Roger died peacefully in his sleep. Joe Wilson looks back now at his life.
25-year-old Roger Bannister, third from the left, gets away.
There are some moments of sporting history which become part of the world's history.
He's decided that this is the right moment.
What Roger Bannister achieved in 1954 was like a lunar landing for 20th century sport.
Bannister's old friend and rival, Chris Chataway, is in third place, waiting his time to take over as pacer.
To run a mile and stop the clock before it reached 4 minutes. In 1954, this was a magical number, a barrier of human achievement, a feat that would redefine what was humanly possible. And it would fall to a young medical student to achieve it.
Pressure gives way to Chataway. Bannister, a superb tactician, has suffered some criticism in the past for adopting his own rather unorthodox training methods, but they're paying dividends now.
At this point it becomes quite painful. I overtake Chris Chataway and begin the finish.
And here he comes. Bannister goes streaking forward with about 250 yards to the tapes.
Every stride counted. The tape broke at 3 minutes 59.4 seconds.
And Bannister has done it. Though he's out on his feet, his coach and team manager tell him he's achieved his ambition.
There was certainly a feeling of it being a national event and something of a landmark for the country.
It might have felt like the world stopped when that clock stopped. 4-minute mile was a sporting catchphrase everyone recognised.
Well, all I can say is that I'm absolutely overwhelmed and delighted. It was a great surprise to me to be able to do it today, and I think I was very lucky.
Sir Roger Bannister was knighted in 1975. Athletics was only a small part of his life. He regarded his work as a neurologist as more significant. When he was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease, he described the gentle irony that a neurologist should find himself with a neurological condition. Training for Roger Bannister in athletics had been half an hour a day on a cinder track. The world's first 4-minute miler was also perhaps sport's last great amateur.
Sir Roger Bannister, who has died at the age of 88. Let's talk more about his life. We've been hearing moving tributes to Sir Roger. Andy Moore is with us now. Andy, an extraordinary achievement, that 4-minute mile, but also an extraordinary life.
That's right, and the tributes to Sir Roger have been led by the Prime Minister. She said he was a great British sporting icon whose achievements were an inspiration to us all. He will be greatly missed. We've heard from Sebastian Coe. He said this is a day of intense sadness, both for our nation and for all of us in athletics. There is not a single athlete of my generation who was not inspired by Roger and his achievements, both on and off the track. From the triple Olympic medalist Roger Black, we've heard, he said he was wonderful, Sir Roger. He was always around athletics. He was always this iconic figure. And lots of touching tributes from members of the public. Some words keep cropping up: legend, gentleman. A lot of people saying he was a source of inspiration from them. And from his family, the most touching tribute, saying he died surrounded by his family, who was loved by them. He said, they went on to say, he banked his treasure in the hearts of his friends.
Andy, thank you very much indeed. Andy Moore. Ireland's foreign minister has suggested that the European Union is likely to reject Theresa May's plan to keep a soft border between Northern Ireland and the Republic after Brexit. Mrs May says the UK will leave the single market and the customs union, but insists there will be no return to barriers and checks on the border. Here's our political correspondent, Susanna Mendonça.
It's 310 miles long, 30,000 people cross it every day, and more than £1 billion a week is done in trade across the border between the UK and the Republic of Ireland. When Britain leaves the European Union, this currently invisible border will become its frontier with the EU, and all sides want to keep it invisible. The question is how, though, considering that Britain doesn't want to stay in the single market or customs union.
we're committed, the Irish Government, all the parties in Northern Ireland, to making sure there's no hard border.
The Prime Minister says a soft border could be kept intact through the use of technology and no new trade restrictions on smaller businesses. But in its first in-depth response to her plan, the Republic of Ireland has cast doubt on whether the EU would go for it.
I'm not sure that the European Union will be able to support a situation whereby 80% of companies that trade north-south and south-north will actually protect the integrity of the EU single market.
The Irish leader met the Prime Minister last year to discuss solutions to the Irish border question, which has been a sticking point in the Brexit negotiations. The European Union wants Northern Ireland in a customs union, while the DUP and the UK government do not. Mrs May says her speech moves the issue forward.
It sets out some ways, particularly on the issue of customs across the border, in which we can resolve that. And I'm pleased to say that the Taoiseach, when I met him recently, has agreed that the UK and Irish governments and the Commission can sit down and look in more detail at the proposals that we've put forward.
The future of financial services is another crucial area for the UK economy, and the Prime Minister's made clear that the city could lose some access to European markets. She knows the deal Britain is after in this area and in other sectors is a vast departure from the kinds of trade deals the EU has done before.
It's very broad, so it was covering issues like industrial goods, like cars, but also financial services, energy, transport, law, science, agriculture, fisheries.
Tomorrow we'll get a clearer idea of what the European Union thinks when it responds to Mrs May's plans. Susanna Mendonça, BBC News.
Large numbers of people are reported to be fleeing from the Syrian enclave of eastern Ghouta as government forces continue a ground assault against the last remaining rebels there. There are suggestions rebels in some areas may be negotiating a surrender. The United Nations has cancelled plans to deliver aid to civilians in the area today. Around 40 trucks had been due to go in. Voting is underway in Italy's general election after a divisive campaign dominated by immigration. The polls opened following the centre-left government facing a stiff challenge from both a right-wing coalition and the populist Five Star movement, which could emerge as the largest party. An independent report that was given to the board of the construction giant Carillion 4 months before it collapsed has now been published. It says the firm had been aggressively managed to make its balance sheet look better than it was. Well, the document's been published by two Commons committees which are examining why Carillion went out of business in January with debts of almost £1 billion. Work is continuing to clear snow from roads and railway lines after days of disruption. 15 flood warnings are still in place in the southwest of England and the northeast of England as well. Well, our correspondent Andy Gill is at Scotch Corner on the A1 in North Yorkshire. Andy, what's the latest there?
Well, the snow is still continuing to fall, as you can see. This is the main A66 road which links Scotch Corner in North Yorkshire to Penrith in Cumbria. It had been closed for 5 days because of the snow, but in the last couple of hours it has now reopened. The Highways Agency is saying its crews worked very hard to clear the snow. Driving conditions still very poor, though, not just because of the snow, but because of fog as well. The weather affecting Transpennine rail routes too, Newcastle to Carlisle, no trains there as a replacement bus service, and the Leeds-Lancaster to Carlisle rail route also affected. So far as the main coast links between England and Scotland go, the East Coast Main Line did get trains running again yesterday, but there are no trains on the West Coast Line today. There's a replacement bus service there. In fact, rail companies across the UK say the weather has been so bad that it's making cancellations and delays throughout the country, and that will continue to be the case tomorrow, so you should check before you try to make any rail journeys. And of course a number of minor roads in rural and hilly areas in England, Wales and Scotland still completely blocked by snowdrifts as well. There is a thaw on the way, we're told, but tomorrow's rush hour, because of that, because of power cuts as well, is unlikely to be anything like normal.
Andy, many thanks indeed. Andy Gill reporting. Well, you can see more on all of today's stories on the BBC News channel. The next news on BBC One is at 6:05. Goodbye for now.